What if the secret to making women chase you wasn't in what you said, but in what you silently embodied? Most men spend their lives chasing texting first, double texting, second, overthinking every word, trying to impress, trying to win. But the man who doesn't chase, he's the one she can't stop thinking about. Why? Because he flipped the script. He became the prize. And he did it not through tactics or charm, but through presence, through stoic strength. A man rooted in self-mastery doesn't need to prove his worth. He moves through the world with calm certainty, guided by purpose, immune to chaos. That kind of presence is rare, and women feel it instantly. It triggers something primal, a deep subconscious pull toward what can't be easily claimed. She sees him and senses something different. He doesn't seek her validation. He doesn't beg for attention. He's simply aligned. And that stillness, that unshakable focus, it's magnetic. You don't need to be louder. You don't need more tricks. You need to become the kind of man who makes women wonder, why isn't he chasing me? That question plants the seed. That seed becomes desire. And that desire becomes pursuit. This isn't about games. It's about power, the quiet kind that doesn't demand but draws in. Master yourself and the chase ends. Because now, you are what's being chased. Why do some men walk into a room and instantly shift the energy without saying a word? It's not magic, it's purpose. While most men chase attention, the man with purpose commands it. He doesn't need to impress, he is impressive. Not because of what he wears or what he says, but because he knows exactly where he's going. And that clarity, it radiates. Purpose is the engine behind magnetic confidence. When you know what drives you, your mission, your values, your direction, you stop looking outward for approval. You stop needing her to validate your worth. Instead, you lead. And women are instinctively drawn to that. Not because you're trying to win them, but because they feel safer, more alive, and more curious around a man who's building something bigger than himself. A man who doesn't pause his goals for anyone. That's why confidence isn't something you fake. It's something you build brick by brick through action, consistency, and devotion to a deeper vision. Without purpose, your presence feels hollow. With it, you become a force. The kind of man women don't just notice, they gravitate toward, because you're no longer chasing anything. You're simply becoming everything, and that shift changes everything. Ever wonder why women are drawn to the man who stays calm while everyone else loses control? It's not just attractive, it's evolutionary. In a world that's reactive and chaotic, emotional composure is the rarest form of power. It tells her you can lead, protect, and navigate storms without breaking. That when pressure rises, you don't flinch, you think. And that kind of calm. It doesn't just earn respect, it builds trust. Women don't want a man who never feels. They want a man who can feel deeply but still choose wisely. A stoic man doesn't lash out. He doesn't spiral. He observes, breathes, responds. That steadiness is what makes him unforgettable. Because while others are controlled by their emotions, he controls his state. And when she sees that, when she watches you stay grounded in moments that would unravel most, her instinctual attraction kicks in. You become the one she leans into, not the one she has to manage. That's real strength. Not dominance, not bravado, restraint. A man who doesn't fight every battle but wins the ones that matter. And in doing so, he becomes the eye of the storm, the calm, the anchor, the one she chases not because he demands her attention, but because he gives her something far more valuable, emotional security. What if the reason she's losing interest is because you've made yourself too easy to win? Attraction doesn't thrive in comfort, it thrives in tension, in challenge. And when a man gives away all his time, energy, and attention too freely, he becomes predictable, accessible, forgettable. Women don't crave the man who's always available, they crave the man they have to earn. It's not about playing games or being distant. It's about having standards, a life, a mission that comes first. The man who is a challenge isn't cold or dismissive, he's selective. And that selectiveness makes his presence valuable. He doesn't bend over backward to prove his worth because he already knows it. He doesn't chase, not because he's arrogant, but because he respects his time, his energy, and his purpose. That creates contrast, and contrast creates desire. The Stoic man is the challenge not because he withholds affection, but because he offers depth. And depth can't be rushed. The more a woman has to lean in to understand him, the more emotionally invested she becomes. In a world full of men trying to be liked, be the man who's comfortable being pursued. Because you're not a prize that begs to be picked, you're the fire she wants to touch, but can't quite hold. And that mystery is irresistible. Have you ever noticed how the man who cares the least about impressing others often becomes the one everyone wants to impress? That's the quiet power of non-neediness. It's not arrogance. It's not indifference. It's emotional wholeness. A man who is non-needy doesn't chase attention, he attracts it. He walks into a room without wondering who's watching because he's not performing, he's present. And that grounded energy is magnetic. Women are deeply intuitive and they can feel the difference between a man who needs something from them and a man who is simply being himself. Non-neediness says, I'm already full. Your presence adds value, but it doesn't define mine. And that, ironically, is what makes her lean in. Because most men are begging for scraps of approval, texting too often, over-explaining, seeking reassurance, giving too much too soon. But the Stoic man isn't desperate for connection. He chooses it. His life is full. His path is clear. And when he welcomes someone into his space, it means something. That rarity is what draws women in. She doesn't chase him because he's withholding. She chases him because he doesn't need her to chase him. His self-respect creates an unspoken invitation. You're welcome here, but I was whole before you arrived. That's not manipulation. That's magnetism born from inner strength. And in today's world, it's unforgettable. What if the deepest connection you could ever create with a woman doesn't come from impressing her, but from letting her see the real you, without falling apart? That's the paradox of true masculine strength, vulnerability, not as weakness, but as quiet confidence. In a world full of men who either hide everything or overshare recklessly, the Stoic man walks a different path. He opens up not to seek validation or sympathy, but to show depth, awareness, and resilience. He doesn't pretend to be perfect. He reveals that he's evolved. And that contrast is magnetic. When a man can share his past struggles, his flaws, or his fears, and do it with calm, grounded composure, he becomes human in the most powerful way. It signals to a woman, I'm strong enough to face myself and safe enough for you to be real too. But there's a line. Vulnerability without self-control becomes emotional dumping. It shifts from connection to dependence. The Stoic man knows this. He chooses when to share, how much to share, and why. He leads the conversation with intention not to be liked, but to be understood. That balance of openness and restraint is rare, and when she feels it, truly feels it, she doesn't just admire you. She trusts you. She craves you. Because now you're not just a man, you're a man with depth. What if the secret to making women chase you isn't about doing more, but about becoming more? That's the core truth most men miss. They chase tactics, tricks, and techniques hoping to win attention. But the man who women truly chase, he's not playing a game. He's living a standard. He's grounded in purpose, emotionally composed, quietly confident, and authentic in his vulnerability. He doesn't perform. He doesn't prove. He simply embodies. And that energy shifts everything. Because attraction isn't just about physical traits, it's about the feeling a woman has in your presence. Safety, depth, leadership, curiosity. These are things you can't fake, and she knows the difference. When you stop chasing and start leading yourself, she feels it. She senses that your attention is valuable, your presence is earned, and your world is complete with or without her. That's when the dynamic changes. Not because you withheld affection, but because you never needed her approval in the first place. That's the man she'll think about. The one she couldn't quite figure out. The one who didn't chase, but quietly drew her in because he knew who he was. So stop performing. Start becoming. Because once you do, you won't need to chase a thing. The right women and the right life will chase you. What if the real victory wasn't getting her to notice you, but becoming the kind of man who doesn't need her to? That's the quiet power that underlies everything you've just built self-mastery. When you've stripped away the need for validation, rooted yourself in purpose, embraced emotional composure, become a challenge, mastered non-neediness, and revealed vulnerability without losing control, what remains is you. Whole, centered, undeniable. And that version of you doesn't chase, because he doesn't need to. His value speaks before he does. His energy enters a room before he says a word. Women don't just want to be around him, they respect him because he lives by principle, not impulse. The game ends here. Not because you played it better, but because you outgrew it. The Stoic man isn't magnetic because he manipulates, he's magnetic because he's real. He's the eye in the storm, the calm in the chaos, the presence that doesn't waver when tested. And that kind of man, he's unforgettable. So stop asking, how do I get her to chase me, and start asking, who am I becoming when no one's watching? Because that's the man she'll chase, not because he wanted her to, but because she couldn't help it. Quiet power, unshakable presence. That's the final form of attraction. What if everything you've been chasing, her attention, her respect, even your own sense of worth, has been waiting on the other side of one question? Do I truly respect myself? Because that's where it all begins. Not in her response, not in their opinions, but in the quiet, unshakable truth you carry when no one is watching. Self-respect is the foundation that every other trait is built on. Without it, your confidence crumbles the moment you're rejected. Without it, your purpose wavers under pressure. Without it, your vulnerability turns into emotional leakage instead of connection. But with it, you move differently. You say less, but mean more. You stop performing and start leading. A man who respects himself doesn't settle for attention, for company, for anything that diminishes his standard. And that boundary, it's powerful. Because when a woman sees that you treat your time, your energy, and your heart as sacred, she feels that. And it makes her lean in. Self-respect is the quiet force that tells the world, I don't need to be chosen, I choose. So if you want to be chased, admired, and remembered, start with the man in the mirror. Show him that you're worth it. And the world, including her, will follow that lead. Always. In a world that constantly pressures men to chase approval, impress others, and perform for love, the deepest lesson is this: you attract what you are, not what you pretend to be. The pursuit of women attention or validation often leaves men exhausted, not because the goal is wrong, but because the approach is rooted in need, not strength. Through the lens of Stoicism, we learn that the most magnetic version of a man isn't the loudest or the flashiest. It's the one who is grounded, purposeful, emotionally composed, and deeply self-respecting. Life changes when you shift your focus from trying to be chosen to choosing yourself. From needing connection to offering it, from over-explaining to simply embodying. This journey isn't about being cold or untouchable, it's about being undeniably solid. When you respect your time, set firm boundaries, and live with intention, you not only draw others toward you, you inspire them. And perhaps most importantly, you no longer fear rejection because you no longer reject yourself. That's the real power. That's what turns you from someone chasing love into someone worth chasing. Let that be the standard, not just in attraction, but in how you live, lead, and love every single day.